Warner Animation Group, one of the major animation studios to pop up in the 2010 decade. You might know them for the creative team behind the Lego Movie, or the Lego Batman movie, or the recent Scoop. But for some reason, this company, or this studio I should say, doesn't really get talked about that much. There are a lot of people pointing out how Sony Animation or Illumination or Blue Sky is struggling to find a foothold in the animation industry, but nobody seems to talk about Warner Animation Group. But believe me when I say, Warner Animation Group is struggling really hard. They find themselves in the same problems that other animation studios have, where they have one successful film, but after that, all of their other films get overshadowed by a lot of other animated films. Why is that? Why has Warner Animation Group struggled to find a foothold in the animation industry? Why are they struggling to reach the same potential that their competitors have? Well, let's take a look at what ruined, or what is ruining, Warner Animation Group. Now, I'm not going to go into the full history because that would take probably an hour, because to understand the history of Warner Animation Group, we need to understand the history of the studio that preceded it, Warner Brothers Feature Animation. In 1991, Warner Brothers Feature Animation was founded, and this is a studio that would compete with Disney in making their own animated features. Their first film was Space Jam. It was a mix of live action and animation, and it was quite successful, raking in $230.4 million off of an $80 million budget. Warner Brothers Feature Animation was off to a great start. However, Space Jam would be their only legitimate success, and it was all downhill from there. And this kind of plays into Warner Animation Group's string of bad luck, since the exact same thing happened. Next was Quest for Camelot in 1998. It's a movie based off the King Arthur legend, where Garrett and Kayleigh have to save Camelot. When it was released, it was an absolute disaster, making $38.1 million at the box office off of a $40 million budget. And to this day, Quest for Camelot is known as a Disney clone, alongside Fern Gully and The Swan Princess. Their next film was The Iron Giant in 1999. And this film is quite a legend in the animation industry. It went from being a flop to an underrated gem to a cultural worldwide phenomenon, and is now considered one of the greatest animated features of all time. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I kind of spoiled its box office take for you guys. I'll still get into that. When it was released in 1999, it was another box office failure for Warner Brothers, making $31.3 million off of a $48 million budget. However, after it became famous, it had a limited edition re-release in theaters, so it got a second chance on the big screen. Their next film was Osmosis Jones in 2001. Just like Space Jam, it was a mixture of live action and animation. It takes place inside Bill Murray, where a white blood cell and a pill try to save Bill Murray from a virus named Thrax. When Osmosis Jones was released, it was an even worse failure for Warner Brothers, making $14 million off of a $75 million budget. However, later on, Osmosis Jones would later get its own TV series with Ozzy and Drix, which lasted for 2 seasons. Warner Brothers Feature Animation's last film was Looney Tunes Back in Action in 2003. Just like Space Jam, it was a mixture of live action and animation. It originally started off as a sequel to Space Jam, but later got changed due to the director not wanting anything to do with Space Jam, and making the Looney Tunes movie he wanted to make. Warner Bros. Feature Animation had a lot of high hopes for this film, that it would save them from absolute destruction. And when Looney Tunes Back in Action was released in theaters in 2003, it was a failure. It was a slight improvement from last time. It made $68.5 million, but off of a $80 million budget. Looney Tunes Back in Action was the final straw, and so in 2003, Warner Bros. Feature Animation shut down for good.